Alright, this is about as exciting a day in the office as one can expect. I'm surrounded by Porsche's entire range of performance cars which have been brought here to the Buddh International Circuit with a very academic exercise in mind. We're here to find out if Porsche's pure petrol-driven performance translates just as well to its electric cars, and to do that they have brought in everything because they want to show us that there is some inherent Porsche DNA in every one of their cars. From this purebred GT3 RS to the Carrera Cabriolet 911, the 718 GTS, the Macan GTS, and of course the Porsche Taycan. And like I said, this isn't entirely about thrill-seeking, although it is partially about that. And even though it is hot as hell out here and the track temperatures are soaring, I'm going to do my best to get as many laps in as many of these cars as possible to show you whether the electric performance and the electric future that awaits Porsche is just as exciting as the one that we're going to experience today. Porsche is without a doubt the most wholesome performance car brand to operate in the country. For a brand that was associated with one name only for the longest time, the 911, it's come to provide stellar on-track performance from pretty much all its cars. From the Panamera Turbo S to the Macan GTS, the Cayenne Turbo, and of course the 718. Each car contains the same strand of pedigreed DNA while offering a slightly different flavor of performance. So where do we begin? Well, how about a dive straight into the deep end? To do this, Porsche set up a little slalom course to show us the marked difference between a standard 911 Carrera and a GT3 RS. Two cars that represent peak Porsche handling and braking prowess. If it looked smooth on the outside, things were pretty different on the inside. And with my intense concentration phase out of the way, let's now look at whether Porsche's inherently sporty DNA has been successfully transplanted across its range of cars. First, there's the Cayenne Turbo. Big, lumbering mass of metal and, in this case, lots of tan leather that, thanks to a twin-turbo V8 petrol, can be surprisingly fun around an F1 racetrack. The Cayenne is a brute. In this spec, it gets a twin-turbo V8 putting out a massive 541 bhp, and yet this lumbering giant manages to not wallow around the bends and feel fairly nimble. Yeah, it's not as nimble as the Macan GTS or, of course, the 718, but switching to it after being tossed around in the 911, the differences weren't as massively pronounced as I was expecting. My spleen was still intact, and my cheeks weren't just being sloshed around from left to right. On the whole, the Cayenne Turbo, despite it being designed primarily for linear speed, managed to compose itself fairly well around an F1 circuit. As far as Porsche's SUV performance goes, it's the Macan GTS that really pushes the boundary. Sure, there are more powerful super SUVs out there, but like pretty much all the cars out on track day today, it's a Porsche first and an SUV second. Bury the throttle and the Macan GTS hunkers down and transforms it to a sports car. Yes, there's a bit more roll, but only when compared to the likes of the 718 and the 911. And that's like saying someone is just a tad bit slower than Usain Bolt. The Macan GTS is the overachiever of the lot, milking every cubic centimeter of that V6 to extract 432 bhp and blurring the lines between sports car and SUV so quickly that it's practically imperceptible. For a more typical on-track Porsche experience, the Panamera Turbo is the one to go for. Packing a twin-turbo V8, it delivers a gut-crushing 621 bhp of power, along with 820 Nm of torque. Unlike the straight six-packing 911, the Panamera has a more raw muscle car flavor, which allows it to take on not only other hyper-powered sports sedans of the world, but also quite a few thoroughbred supercars. On an F1 circuit like Buddh, its low center of gravity gives it an obvious performance advantage over its SUV siblings. More than that, the Panamera Turbo S is the closest internal combustion counterpart to the Taycan Turbo. In fact, the next Panamera will actually be an electric only. It's got similar dimensions, this one seats 4, and even has similar power figures. But having to contend with the standard Taycan, which makes only 483 bhp, the two in this case aren't exactly comparable. Still, I was curious to see if the no-engine, battery-toting Taycan could mask its weight as well as the front-engine Panamera. I have to admit being surprised by the Taycan. I was prepared for the sudden linear acceleration that's the party trick of most performance EVs, but despite having a 2-speed gearbox, it managed to be engaging. Let's not forget this is just the base Taycan with roughly 400 bhp of power, yet it manages to build speed pretty rapidly on a swooping high-speed F1 circuit. In the absence of a roaring engine's oral cues, it's the brakes that serve as the first reminder of just how different this car's mannerisms are. The added bulk of the Taycan immediately has you recalibrating your braking inputs. But despite having been warned of a snappy tail when accelerating mid-corner, the Taycan never once lost its composure. And it has a surprising way of gathering speed, which just kinda sneaks up on you and keeps you on your toes. As for the 718, I have two words: manual transmission. Porsche is the only luxury sports car maker putting these out, and more power to them because it changes everything. Every throw of the gear stick reminds you why manual shifting is truly the best way to commune with a machine. If it's electric performance Porsche wanted to sell me on, then this feels like a bit of an own goal. Unlike the rear-engine GT3 RS, the mid-engine 718 makes the 4-litre flat 6 feel balanced but not terrifying. Yes, power is explosive and there's a wider margin for error, but the steering response is just so sharp, nothing this side of the GT3 or a 911 can match. Sure, the manual gearbox isn't right up there with the PDK in terms of acceleration, but put the numbers aside and you realize it's the manual that stays with you. Of all the cars on track, it was the manual 718 Spider I found myself hankering for long after the day was over. The 718 is a properly accomplished sports car with pretty much zero peers. It is dangerously close to being 911 level of driving perfection. Saving the best for the last, we now come to the main event, the 911 GT3 RS. This is the previous gen version, and yet it demonstrates perfectly why Porsche isn't quite ready to bid goodbye to petrol performance even after 2030. Suddenly, everything about other performance cars feels excessive. The GT3 RS has the most communicative steering there is. In fact, you're instantly, almost omnisciently aware of everything the car is doing. It's so mechanical and so precise. Seldom have track cars felt this balanced and this explosive. With the fat completely trimmed, the GT3 RS can leave even a standard 911 Carrera catching its breath. It's visceral, occasionally unforgiving, with a sharp and just explosive throttle response that keeps you immersed in the driving experience better than pretty much any road legal supercar. The only way I feel like it could be better on track just in this moment is if it had a manual gearbox. But in every other respect, it's just about as precise and as poised as track driving can get this side of a single-seater performance car. Okay. First things first, that bit of hard braking, that was a bit nerve-wracking because normally a sports car, especially a Porsche, would stop like this. The way it's picking up power, there's no need to shift down a cog or two because there are no cogs. Cornering is as flat as I'd expected originally because you've got so much weight at the bottom. But the way it's managing this bulk is remarkable. There's certainly over 2 tons that I'm dealing with, but none of that tail snapping bit of action that I was warned about. And I am in Sport Plus. You can feel just a little bit. If you push it, then some of those Porsche Hellraiser characteristics can come out. And remember, this is the standard Taycan. The Turbo S is much faster. Power's just building up fast, but it's not as sterile as I expected. There is a certain sensation to it. I would like to be able to fiddle with paddles, which I've kind of grown accustomed to at the BIC. Not being able to do that is just a bit off-putting. But then there's the fact that just all the torque is just instantaneously available, so you don't really need to do any of that. You do feel that bulk shifting. I mean, there's no body roll, not even a hint of it, but you can feel gravity just sort of tugging at it. Am I completely sold on it? Not yet, but this is just the beginning. These cars will get lighter. They will be more balanced. The 911 has had over 60 years to be perfected. Porsche has just about started with this, and as a starting point, the Taycan is exceptional. It's certainly the most engaging electric car that I've driven. Oh, well, there you have it. The best end to a glorious day. I've been told we've done over 90 kilometers on this track alone, and it's been just a fantastic education, because this is the only place where cars like this can be tested. And to answer the big question whether Porsche has closed bridging that gap, I think it would be unfair to say so. It's a little premature because they've just started on their electric journey, and there's no word on just what is going to happen to the 911, because remember, Porsche only aims to be about 80% electric by 2030, which means that cars like these could continue running on synthetic fuel because there's just so much engagement. You know, the GT3 RS just fires up every synapse, every nerve ending, and the level of engagement that these cars offer is they've had over half a century to perfect that. So to expect an electric powertrain to do that is just a very tall order. I would like academic exercises like these more often, because it's just a lot of fun getting to the bottom of what electric performance has to offer in the future. It's going to get a lot more exciting. As a starting point, it's pretty good. But for now, I'm going to stick to the good old 911.